We've got Doug Fagan here, who is the president of international business for Ant Financial. I think we can call Ant Financial the biggest fintech in the world, Doug, right? Or tech fin.
Hi, I think that's right. Largest tech fin in the world. Although there, lots of movement out there, so who knows what others are doing.
Well, there's a lot happening these past couple of months, that's for sure. So let me do a very brief introduction, and then Doug, I'll ask you to do the same. James Lloyd, partner at EY, based here in Hong Kong. I run our fintech and payments team for the region. Ant Financial is one of those companies, and AliPay as it was before, that of course folks in the region here have had an eye on for many years. I mean, definitely one of the most interesting, one of the most innovative, companies in the world, frankly, in the financial technology space. And I think everybody in this conference should know who they are by now. But maybe Doug, if you could start with a brief introduction to yourself. And how you came to be at Ant, and then we can kind of jump quickly into where the business is today.
Sure. So I'm Doug Fagan. I'm the president of international for Ant Financial, and I joined the company about 4 years ago. Prior to that, I was in financial services, running the financial institutions group at Goldman Sachs in New York. And before that, spent 6 years in Hong Kong as well, so I had some connection to China. Since joining Ant, I've spearheaded our globalization and expansion around the world. We now have G-Local wallets in 10 markets around Asia, and reach through other services to different markets in 56 countries. So it's been a great journey over the last 4 years, and really fun time to be at Ant Financial. Obviously, great things going on in China, and lots of interesting things internationally as well.
So Doug, it has seemed like the last few years have been a bit of a rocket ship. Clearly, for those who know China, Ant Financial, Alibaba, AliPay, and the various services across the network have just been growing like crazy the past number of years. More and more people online, more and more people offline, digital payments, and all those kind of, as I said, related services, financial, non-financial. But equally, international has seen a lot of growth. Whether it's Southeast Asia, of course, India, big presence, international acceptance. What of the last couple of months, talk us through some of the developments of the last couple of months, maybe pre-COVID-19, this is the quarantine summit, but then also, has there been an impact on your international business? How are you seeing things trend generally in the digital payment space? Maybe a little bit of color around that.
Sure. Well, our mission is all about financial inclusion. And so we've been focused on bringing people into the world's financial services system, and really have been pleased over the last 4 or 5 years. Nearly 500 million people have been added to the global financial system, and through AliPay in China, Paytm in India, our various e-wallets in Southeast Asia, we've been very fortunate to participate in that. And that actually is continuing in the wake of the COVID-19 crisis and what's emerging here. Indeed, what we see now is a trend toward e-commerce, and so people transacting online, more of a move toward contactless payments, where people want to pay, without physical contact with other people for various different services, and much more around digital marketing and engagement with the consumer online. And so these services were naturally in our wheelhouse and things that were embedded into our digital wallet platforms. But the kind of technology becoming the empowering tool for people has become even greater in this in this crisis around the virus. And so that's what we've been really focused on, and we've been doing that through through our online payment services for e-commerce and for other digital goods, as well as through our G-Local strategy, where we have local wallet partnerships around Asia. And so, today we're serving 1.2 billion customers, 900 million in China, and the rest outside of China through these different services. So that's, been the focus, and, the shift, as you might expect, toward more digital, more online, more contactless.
Yeah, I guess I'm curious generally, and probably one of the themes of this quarantine summit will be, whether it's, I've got kids who have been off school since late January here in Hong Kong. The schools have been closed. Obviously, we've been doing a lot of work from home, still working on client engagements, but all remotely. So whether it's education, whether it's work, whether it's payments. We've got some digital banks coming online. I mean, clearly this digitization of all of these sectors has been rapidly accelerated. I guess the big question is, does this continue? I mean, does it continue after this COVID-19 pandemic, hopefully sorts itself out over the coming weeks and months? Is it, have we seen a step change, I would say, in the kind of digitization of financial services?
Yeah, I think we certainly believe that we are seeing a step change, and that that it will definitely continue. These are very kind of long-term secular trends. I think, to us, using the technology on the mobile phone and through digital engagement is just much more consumer friendly, much more high information content, much lower cost to both consumers and to merchants. And so for these fundamental business reasons, we think that the trends around digital payments will definitely continue for quite some time. And I think that in this current environment with the crisis, it's actually forcing people to step back and look online, and to think about how they should do things when they can't go out and they are in quarantine, like we all are here on this summit. And so, I think that's, what will, I think, be an accelerator to it. And so, we're trying to help people as we can by providing those services.
Tell us a little bit, maybe some of the partnerships you guys have been focused on. I mean, I personally have a keen interest in the Vanguard deal that was recently announced, I guess, a couple of months ago. Can you tell us a little bit? I mean, Ant, I think historically has been, developing a lot of these kind of key strategic partnerships, both in China and externally. But the Vanguard one, I think, will be extremely interesting to folks in North America, Europe, Asia. Can you give us a bit of detail on that?
Sure, happy to do that. First, at its kind of core, we believe very much in partnership, and I think that fintech is an area where, when companies come together, they can do much more than any individual player. And so we've always had an open ecosystem approach and have worked with many different players in China, and we've been pleased to bring that internationally. To your question on Vanguard, obviously, top-notch name in fund management around the world, and we were very pleased to have the chance to partner with them and to bring their services to China. And it's actually a perfect combination because we can combine our technology and digital reach to consumers across China with Vanguard's top-notch fund management and investment management expertise. And so what we've done is introduce a very simple product for consumers in China to be able to access very high-quality fund management products through their mobile phone, and in a very easy fashion. And so the minimum balance for these accounts is 800 RMB, so a little over $100 US, and people can open up their fund management account, get access to Vanguard's suite of services that have been put in a simplified format for our consumers, and do it through the AliPay app. And so indeed, we've seen actually a lot of pickup of this because people have been stuck at home here, quarantine, and they can now see what kind of things should I be investing in, what's my time horizon of my goals for saving, how should this work together, and so we've been enabling that, and it's good to see in these times, also the ability to work with the leading U.S. company, one of the leading U.S. companies in fund management, bringing them to China. Well,
yeah, I mean, we're touching on the geopolitical angle there, which I won't go too into detail on, but it has been interesting. Certainly, being in this part of the world over the past couple of years, clearly we've had the U.S.-China. I'm not sure if I can call it a trade war, but trade tensions. But in fact, what we've seen is quite a lot of cooperation and in fact, opening up of certain aspects of the Chinese economy and financial services technology. So it's interesting. I think we all read the news, we all understand the geopolitical aspects to it, but there's still a lot of business being done, a lot of partnerships being formed. How do you guys think about?
No, that's
sorry. Go on.
I just say I think that's absolutely right, and when it's interesting when you divorce yourself from the talking heads on television and other media, it's all you hear is the same kind of thing about whatever the leaders want to get into the news streams. But on the ground, an amazing amount of cooperation and a lot of things happening in a very constructive way. The other product we introduced was a product called Tour Pass, whereby global consumers can come to China. And initially, this service was enabling them to create a digital, a virtual a debit card with a Chinese bank, where they could use then that virtual debit card to pay with AliPay at merchants all across China, digital products and the like. We're now going to evolve that to where they can just put in their international card of all different types and use it. And so, I think when the world comes back to something more approaching normal and people can travel and do this, we're very excited about this product and what it will enable, working closely with Visa, MasterCard, the global card companies, to connect them to our system in China. And so, I think we'll see more and more of this type of trend.
Yeah, so that's the Tour Pass initiative. Actually, I was going to ask you about that as well. I think it's an interesting one, because what folks who will have visited China in the past couple of years will realize is, you land now, and unless you're using AliPay or perhaps WeChat Pay, if I'm allowed, name the other major ecosystem. In practical terms, it's very difficult to get around in China right now unless you're using one of these, and that's a reflection on how much they've grown in such a short period of time. But it's pretty tremendous, because it is this. I guess in North America or Europe, there's a lot of talk about developing ecosystems, but frankly, a lot of it is kind of consulting speak, if I can say that. Whereas in China, we've seen it in the real world. Being able to access these first-party, third-party, financial, non-financial services through this kind of single application, it's pretty impressive. Let me ask you about that. Andrew Morris here will know that I spoke at a particular fintech conference in the US, I guess maybe 6 or 7 years ago for the first time, and I was talking about China and I was talking about AliPay, and I think I had maybe 12 people in the room, and of those 12 people, probably 10 of them were in the wrong room. Nobody cared. I quite honestly, like 6, 7, 8 years ago, China was not really on the global fintech or payments radar for kind of obvious reasons, I guess. But during that period, as a consequence of AliPay, as a consequence of Tencent, Ping An perhaps, and some of the others, this China story has become such a big deal. How has your role changed in that period? I know you've been with Ant about 3 or 4 years, I guess, right? Have you found that at this 3 or 4 years ago, did people know who Ant Financial were when you were traveling in the US or Europe? How have people's perception of the business changed? And is it getting easier or harder to kind of make those types of international partnerships?
Yeah, I think the perception has definitely changed, and quite dramatically, to your point. I joined 4 years ago, and when I first talked to people about what I was doing, leaving Goldman Sachs as a partner to go work at Ant Financial, they were like, "What financial? What? And why is it called Ant?" So that was the perspective. I would say some of the more institutional names obviously knew it, but the average person on the street didn't know Ant Financial, didn't know AliPay, and still, I think most on the street in the US and Europe wouldn't necessarily know, but they certainly know Alibaba, and as a consequence, AliPay for us. And by virtue of the globalization of AliPay as a payment mechanism, we're getting to merchants around the world. So, I can go pay with AliPay at Walgreens 2 blocks from my house here in Florida, and I can also use it to pay at Macy's. Well, Macy's, if Macy's stays open, the one closed here. But these stores around and use it. And so I think it's getting more recognized. But most importantly, I think that we're really bringing the success of financial inclusion, where many more people now have a form of payment and a type of savings account or lending account that they didn't have before. And these were people that were probably scared to go to a bank, or maybe didn't feel like they were going to have access. And now they do have access to basic financial services through us and through our partners. And, we can see that around the world. And it's amazing. You go to different countries like Bangladesh, Bcash, our partner there, is everywhere. So it's quite well
So
known.
just so people are clear, though, when you talk about using Alipay in New York, where you're based, I mean that the primary objective there is to service overseas Chinese travelers, right? Or do you plan, or do you have the ambition to kind of build a local customer base as well?
No, look, we're expanding in different ways. Yes, the first service to offer was to serve the AliPay customer when they traveled around the world, and that's where the bulk of our customers remain. And so we're serving them as they travel around the world. But what we are now doing is enabling our partner wallets to also transact through our platform. So in addition to from the Chinese mainland customers from AliPay, being able to use that when they've, for example, traveled to Japan. Now customers from AliPay Hong Kong can use AliPay Hong Kong to pay there, and customers from Kakao in Korea can pay in Japan. So we're starting to enable some cross-border payment from the different e-wallets. And it's a step-by-step process. As demand is out there and we see the opportunity, we will enable that.
Yeah, I think this is one of the things that perhaps analysts kind of missed initially, is that, at least from my perspective, Ant Financial's international ambitions, you've been kind of piecing together a patchwork of wallet providers, either directly or kind of through partnerships in all of these different markets. And you're effectively building at least a regional network, right? I mean, if I travel, as I do regularly, across Southeast Asia, India, and so on, I mean, that interoperability is coming. And it is interesting because building a international network is a very challenging thing to do, right? I mean, you mentioned Visa, Master before have been tremendously successful, but it's also taken them 60 years to some degree. Ant has done this in a relatively short period, and I know it's a work in progress, but it is one of the more ambitious kind of fintech or techfin endeavors. So it's been interesting to see. Tell us, I mean, what about some of the challenges, right? I mean, you mentioned Bcash in Bangladesh, Kakao, which we would know well in Korea. What are some of the challenges that your international partners have faced, either through building interoperability or even just specific to COVID-19? Have there been challenges in these past number of months?
No question, definitely challenges. It's interesting. I think that one of the primary challenges with innovation is how does the new product or service get introduced into a market and spread more broadly within the regulatory environment and within the operating environment within which it needs to operate. And so, the key things for us in moving into any new market are, first, just working with the regulators to figure out basic things like, how do I do KYC for my customer? What are your regulations around protection of data in the local market? And each country has their own policies, of course, and some of them are quite specific and require a lot of tailoring. And that's why we've adopted this more kind of G-local approach. And I'd say in this COVID-19 type of environment, that challenge has actually been further exacerbated, because I have a number of situations where we want to go launch a new service and it's like, oh, we'll go talk to the central bank. Well, it's harder to arrange this type of VC with the central bank, and we're doing it, but it's not as smooth as if you could just go there, meet them, and say, here's how it works, here's what you can do, and make it happen. So that's definitely been a challenge, and we got to kind of continue to work on that. Let me go forward.
Let me ask you on that. I mean, Doug and I were catching up a little bit before this, kind of on the virtual backstage, and I think for many of us based in the region covering APAC, we travel a lot. But I think, Doug, you travel more than I think. You've got to be top 1% of guys who are on an international flight. So how have you found it personally over the past number of months? Has it been challenging from a business perspective, personal perspective? Do you miss the road warrior air miles, or are you kind of happy to stay put for a little bit?
No, I mean, honestly, I was very happy to give up a few air miles for a couple months and spend some time with my wife and kids, which has been a wonderful side benefit to a terrible situation. But it's interesting working virtually. I think it actually causes people to be more efficient in their communication. When I get on a call or a video conference, I have the three things I want to accomplish. I got on the phone last night with a bunch of folks in Thailand. Here's what we want to do. And 20 minutes, we nailed it all down and moved on. And we had some time to just chat and spend some time together, but I think you're more efficient. At the same time, I think the biggest downside is it's hard to innovate and to co-create when you're virtual.
Yeah.
Because things like co-creation, which are very big for our company, we love to get 20 people in a room and say, here's the problem, how do we solve it? And rarely is the answer something that any of us thought about when we started. And that's very hard to do, virtually. And so, I think that the world is, I expect, in some ways suffering a little bit from that. And we need to figure out, ways to do it while we continue through this environment. And hopefully, we can work our way through the environment.
Yeah. I agree with that 100%. So maybe, Doug, tell us, we got about 5 minutes left. I wanted to ask you a couple of more local questions. For me, sitting here in Hong Kong, I guess, folks on the line may not know, but, Hong Kong has issued a number of new digital bank licenses in the past number of months. Unlike perhaps the challenger bank or intermediate licenses in the UK, Australia, and elsewhere, these are full retail bank licenses. And of course, Ant Financial was granted a bank license. So again, just to put it in context for people, this is a pretty big deal because Hong Kong is one of the top 3 international financial centers in the world, alongside New York and London. We have an incredibly competitive capital market, open international financial system, blah blah blah. And you guys have been granted a full retail bank license. Can you talk us through a little bit of the rationale behind that move, how you see that developing, over the kind of months and years, and what does that mean for Ant Financial International?
Yeah, sure. Well, look, I think this move towards digitization is not obviously solely about payments. Sure. It's about all areas of financial services. And for us, indeed, things like savings and lending are critical products that we offer our customers. And so I think that the model we have in China is a reasonable place to look as to the types of things will evolve externally. And so going from the Chinese mainland into Hong Kong, one of the things we thought about was, okay, how do we go beyond payment and provide other services? When Hong Kong, and I applaud the HKMA in the kind of forward-thinking offering digital banking licenses, opened up that opportunity, we wanted to avail ourselves of that. And so, with that license, we'll be able to offer new products and services for a savings account or type of lending account through that. And this is similar to what we do in China with my bank, where we have a bank in which we have an equity stake and we offer their services. I would hasten to add, though, that doesn't mean that's going to be the only service that we offer. We actually work much more with a lot of other institutions. Indeed, in China, we work with over 100 banks through which we do lending. There's no way we could do the balance sheet lending that our customers would demand. And so we rely very much on the partners to do that. And I think Hong Kong will be the same. In fact, I expect you'll see in the next 6 months, we'll work with some of the big banks in Hong Kong doing types of services. And, we're all about what does the customer want. And so, if those services can be best provided by us in conjunction with banks, we'll do that. If it's through this digital bank platform, Vine, we can do that as well. And so I think this kind of open ecosystem approach is what you'll see. I do think that the digital banks are helpful because they allow people and encourage people to innovate and think about what type of services are best served for the customer. And so you've already seen some pretty aggressive terms out there from some of the other digital banks. Sure. And, I think those initial things will spur more people to do things online. And, so I think for adoption of the services, it's a positive trend.
I mean, I should add, full disclaimer, I've also been kind of knee deep in the digital bank space in Asia for a couple of years, but Ant Financial have also applied, of course, for a wholesale digital bank license in Singapore. And I think Ruben Lai, who we'll hear from after this, of course, Grab have themselves applied for a full digital bank license in Singapore. We've got Malaysia coming online. Kakao Bank in Korea has been a tremendous success. Australia has been issuing new licenses. I mean, I am interested in your view as to whether kind of so-called fintechs inevitably migrate towards the full regulatory domain that is a bank or an asset manager or an insurance company. But I guess you've kind of answered that in terms of you see yourselves as having the license, but then equally working with various other parties, perhaps from manufacturing through to distribution.
Yeah, I think two things. One, definitely, I would echo what I said, which we will work with others because we're not a balance sheet company, and we don't want to be.
You don't want to be
we're gonna
valued
very
like a
much work
balance
with
sheet
other
company,
institutions.
Doug. Isn't that the fintech dream?
Well,
You want to be valued like
balance
a
sheet
tech
companies are
company.
critical, but we're very happy being the tech company around that. And and then will the digital banks, how much of the traditional bank activities will they take over? I think it's maybe not going to be as dramatic as it could be potentially, because there are a lot of services. I mean, I'll tell you, I was just working on refinancing my mortgage here in the States. That process is just so manual. It's going to take a long time for the digital guys to take over more. And in the US, they're actually pretty sophisticated on that. But doing mortgage lending in these other markets, it's not going to happen anytime soon through a digital format. But for small ticket consumer lending, for some SME lending, like our 310 product to SMEs, hugely valuable and very useful for that service. So with the kind of consumer mindset, I think you'll see those types of services coming through these digital platforms.
Excellent. A couple more minutes to finish up. One big question, I guess, in this part of the world, but which I think is extremely relevant for everybody right now. We've heard a lot of talk in these past, I guess, 12, 18 months around central bank issued digital currencies. Of course, Facebook's Libra initiative really kind of set the cat amongst the pigeons in terms of having global regulators and BIS and others really think about, gosh, what are we doing in terms of this central bank issued digital currency? I think mainland China, the People's Bank of China, has been pretty far ahead of the curve, frankly, on this, having been openly working on this for a number of years. Just yesterday, we saw some leaked screenshots, which I believe have been authenticated, of a test model of a central bank issued digital currency in mainland China. So for those who don't know, this would be the central bank literally digitally issuing digital RMB in this case direct to a mobile wallet, whether intermediated through a bank or through another player remains to be seen. I don't know how much you can speak about this or will speak about this, but what is the kind of Ant Financial view on these CBDCs? How meaningful do you think it is in China? And then how meaningful do you think it will be internationally over the next couple of years?
Yeah, look, I think this is a space that a lot is just to come in terms of where it is. And so there's really not a whole lot that I have to say about it. Obviously, we monitor it and are there. There's nothing commercially, right now that we're doing as it relates to it. I think we'll see what the governments do, including China's government and others, and then obviously move to think about how that can fit within our ecosystem. I think these can be important trends. I'm not minimizing the trend. We'll see how it plays out there, but there's really nothing right now that I have to comment on.
Okay, sure.
I will say separately, in terms of blockchain type services, that is something broadly we see great adoption of, and especially in China. This is something I think the rest of the world doesn't appreciate. But the deployment of blockchain across all different services, from payment through running hospitals to dealing with the judiciary system, is all done on the blockchain. And I think you're going to see that become really part of the core operating system of many companies, including
Excellent.
ours.
So the message is keep an eye on China, keep an eye on financial. A lot still to come. I think we're at time. I'm kind of lost track of it a little bit, but I want to make sure we leave time for Ruben and the next guys as well. So, Doug, thank you very much. Good to see you remotely, and hopefully next time we'll be in person. Stay safe, and thank you for your time.
Well, thank you, James. Good to spend the time with you, and good to speak with all of you. So appreciate that, and thank you to Andrew Morris and the team for organizing this. I think it'll be a great summit.
Namaste. Thank you, everybody. Cheers.